Welcome to another Faith and Sports Conversation. I'm Paul Putz, Director of the Faith and Sports Institute. Very excited today to have the Reverend Dr. Tyshawn Gardner, a Truett Seminary professor. Tyshawn, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about sports,
Okay.
and you have engaged in sports in a variety of ways.
Right.
We've got pastor, we've got parent, we've got the observer of culture, we've got athlete as well.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Just tell us what sports has meant to your life.
Sports has played a very vital and positive role in my life. As a high school athlete playing baseball and basketball, it's built some mental toughness, of course, friends, competitors who are now lifelong friends, the discipline aspect of it, but also as a parent whose three of our children played baseball and football, but baseball was our primary sport. We built some very close relationships. I've seen the ups and downs of highs and lows of life through sports. We have developed a sense of community around sports. But then there's the part that we have to really be disciplined to help to not make sports an idol
Yeah.
and have it to replace some void that we're missing that only God can fill. So sports have meant a lot to me. I'm a big fan of pro sports, collegiate sports, amateur sports, and I think for me and my family, it's played a very pivotal role in who we are as a people, competitors, but also being able to navigate the highs and lows. I'll never forget as an athlete myself, I was a sore loser. And I'll never forget these words of my father. He says, you have to know how to lose as well as how to win. So that's a life lesson that I've taken with me throughout my ministry as well.
What was Tyshawn Gardner, the athlete, like? Who'd you model your game after back in the day?
Now I was average or below average, so I was, but I did compete. I'm an old school Laker fan, so I didn't have the height of a Magic Johnson, but I wanted to emulate him. But my favorite sport was baseball, and I played shortstop, middle infield. So Ozzie Smith was my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who are you rooting for? Who are the teams you're following?
I hope it's safe to say this. So we just became Baylor Bears. So Baylor Bears, I'm sold out. I'm sold out. I'm a Baylor Bear. But I think at heart I'll always root for the Alabama Crimson Tide. On the pro level, I'm a Yankees fan, I'm a Laker fan, and a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Okay, that's great. Those are some fun teams to root for, right? You're in the
Right.
national conversation. You get a lot of hate and pushback, I'm sure, too.
That's right.
But you can kind of have that back and forth along the way.
Right.
Okay, so you're a fan, you're an athlete, you have kids of your own.
Right.
Walk us through a little bit the youth sports journey. I know a lot of people today have questions about, as Christians, how do we navigate this? When your kids are coming of age, it feels like the youth sports complex, industrial complex, is really starting to ramp up. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. Youth sports is big business. I think last I read an article not too long ago, a couple of days ago, in fact, in America, youth sports is like almost a $40 billion a year industry. So it's and with that, as you can surmise and imagine, there comes a lot of exploitation. So we've had to navigate that. So there's an ethical component, I think, that parents have to be mindful of, but also for Christians, believers, it's having the discipline to say, the Lord is king of my life. The Lord is the ruler of this family. And trying to, against culture, because nowadays, a lot of the tournaments are on Sunday.
Yeah.
So if you on Wednesday, primary days for Christian worship. So we've had to have some hard conversations with coaches that, Coach, we worship on Sunday. Titus, Tristan, Tyson, they can be at practice, but it'll have to be after worship. Now, I would be dishonest to tell you that we've never played a tournament on Sunday, but we try to have a balance. So it's been fun navigating that because on our teams, for the most part, we're surrounded by believers and Christians. So we've worshiped on the road, we've prayed on the road. So it's really been a fun experience. And one other thing, I think sports is a true, in some instances, multicultural experience.
Yeah.
So, whereas we're still struggling with that in the church, we've played baseball with white American families, Latino Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans. So you get that experience, and you become enriched by other cultures, their practices of Christianity. So as a parent, it's been a great journey. Funny thing, we've started attending some of the Baylor baseball games, and that was due to my wife. She was saying, "I just think I would feel closer to my boys if I attend some games." So for us, it was a very positive experience, and I think it's safe to say we navigated that as best we could. Not perfect,
Yeah.
but I like to talk with parents because it's good family time. You can bond with your kids after every game, after every practice. A mother and a father has an opportunity to grasp a teaching moment.
Yeah.
So if it's a strikeout, how to bounce back. If it's a win, how not to be boastful, how to encourage the team or the person you just beat. If you're not starting, and even if you think you should be starting, how to handle conflict. So those are some of the life lessons. And of course, we try to anchor that in biblical principles,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And lastly, I would say it's been a period of evangelism. Not so much of carrying our Bibles, but just living the Christian life. There's always an opportunity for a family who's going through a marital problem or or an addiction that's going to gravitate to you just from the light you try to give and the life you try to live. And so sports has offered us that wide range of experience, and we're grateful for it.
Yeah. Thinking about those life lessons you mentioned, can you share a time where, as a parent, walking with your kids through maybe a success or maybe something challenging, where you felt you did that well? And maybe also a time where you maybe didn't do it as well. What did you learn along the way when it comes to discipling your kids through their sports experience?
Yeah, I can tell you times that I didn't do it well. I really, there are times I think I pushed my kids too hard because, this is a proud dad, but it's also, I think, a truth. Our kids were above average. We had one child to play D1 football. And when you know a child is talented and gifted, you know it, and everyone else knows it, right? And so, in a parent's mind, you become a custodian, a guardian, a steward of that child, I think, as you should. And part of that is, getting up early to work out, addressing bad attitudes. So there are times when I think I was too tough. I can remember a particular game when I just didn't like Titus's body language. And after the game on a Friday, we went back to the football field. Everybody's gone. Now this had to be 10:30, and we ran. I ran him, and so that was probably a little excessive. I meant well, but probably not the best way to handle that. And sadly, we see this kind of overboard parental involvement, even when in Little League Baseball.
Yeah.
We've literally seen fights break out. 5 and 6 year olds.
It's crazy.
Y'all, this is crazy, right? And so we've had that experience where, and those are times, and I will go back. I In that particular instance, I did later come back and tell Titus that was excessive.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. You want the best, but there's a better way. So I think there are other instances. That's one of the most extreme.
Yeah.
But there are times when I think I was more invested than they were.
Yeah.
And probably for the wrong reasons. And part of, I think, of being a Christian and walking with the Spirit of God is being open to that conviction and making those necessary adjustments. I think a time where, by the grace of God, we did it right. Titus wasn't, all of them were good athletes, but Titus played college ball. And he set records. He was a state MVP of his team. He holds in his class, the deadlift and squat record. And so he was sort of an all-star in his team. And this was a kid who we just knew that he was going to play college baseball.
Yeah.
But his senior year, he just had an outstanding football season. And I say all that not to boast, but just to set a context. So we have the opportunity to go play football at Sanford University. And, we're going to continue this highlight reel. And I'll never forget Coach Hatcher saying to parents, he said, many of you came here thinking that your child would play start, get many reps because they were the all-star and the superstar on their team. He said, but if you make it to this level, everybody on this team
That's right.
was the best on their team. And he said, so we've seen a lot of parents and kids leave the program because they didn't play right away. And he said, but on this team, everyone has a role to play. And so Titus, being a competitor, there were times when he was discouraged, times his first year especially, he didn't even travel with the team.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine someone that started their whole life and now they don't even travel, and don't even dress out. So helping him to say it's okay. You're still valuable. Don't place your worth in this sport.
Yeah.
Your time will come, and if it does not, because you don't want to overpromise, right? And if it does not, you've done a lot. You've accomplished a lot just by being on the team. But life is much bigger than sports and a football field. So we learn quick to place our value and to help try to navigate our kids to place their value in Christ and not the baseball diamond. We've always shared with our children, in terms of education and their faith, that at some point, whether it's after high school or after college or after pro, you're going to have to hang up the cleats.
Yep.
Because, and this is my line, because I've never seen a 50-year-old shortstop. But at 50 years old, hopefully you still have a lot of life to live.
That's right.
But it won't be playing baseball. So we've tried to do that, and I think that God allowed us to do that part well.
How do you connect the church part of this at being a pastor? So as a parent, you are helping your kids go through their sports experience, helping them see Jesus in the midst of playing and competing. Meanwhile, you're leading a congregation, so you are discipling other parents and other kids through sports. What did that look like for you as a pastor?
Yeah, very hard at times because you have to be mindful. You don't want to back yourself in a corner to be a hypocrite. But as a pastor, you want those pews filled on Sunday morning. But then when it's your child, you may take off, right?
Yep.
So you live it. You try to let your congregation see how you prioritize and how you sacrifice and how sometimes after practice, after game, you still have to come to the church to help with the outreach program, choir practice, or whatever it may be. So we try to model that. We try to say, okay, there is a way that you can do both and. We try to stay out of either or situations, either church or sports. We try to say you can do both, but Christ and the church has got to be the priority. So we've tried to do that as best we could. Um, I've preached a number of sermon series about idolatry, sports being one, coming from Tuscaloosa, the Crimson Tide and Nick Saban. Even on Sunday, you could tell whether Alabama lost or won. It was dry. I couldn't get an amen anywhere, right? So you try to help your congregation understand that there comes a time when sports can take up too much of our space and our livelihood to where we are robbing God. So trying to navigate that. Also, I think for me as a pastor, helping our congregation and their children to see the flaws of materialism, because I pastored in an African American context, and when you combine athletics with hip hop culture, some of that is not positive,
Yeah.
but it's appealing, it's attractive, it's tempting. And so, how do I poised and position other models before these African American young men and young women? And how do I humanize some of the athletes who they idolize, and at the same time give a Christian critique of what's not healthy in this athlete's behaviors? Is the if the athlete is a womanizer, abusive, if the athlete participate in destructive behaviors? So we've had to hold up these models, both positive and negative. Then you have your Tim Duncans, right? You have some of the athletes who live a stellar life, that are family men and family women, who you try to steer your parents and your children to emulate. And then I think there's something about stewardship. Stewardship of life, stewardship of finances. I think I mentioned to you in another conversation, we played travel baseball. Travel baseball is extremely expensive. But can I responsibly invest in this and at the same time support my church? Where is the best investment?
Yeah.
So learning how to draw the line, learning how to steward our lives and our finances well for God's glory has been challenges uh, and opportunities for me as a pastor, trying to get parents to see that we as a community of faith, a body of Christ, we have a responsibility to perpetuate ministry, to facilitate ministry, both with our bodies, our minds, and our finances. And because you can get into other things like the best cleats, uh, a baseball bat can run you $650.
I'm learning this out. Got my
Oh,
8-year-old. He's starting to play. It's
yeah.
wild.
Oh wow, man, those bats can be expensive.
Yeah.
The gloves can be, up same, $400-500. So trying to keep that in moderation. Does a 7-year-old kid need a $600 glove? Probably not. You know what I mean? But it's hard when people on your team don't share the same values,
Yeah.
right? So it's trying to always at all times elevate Christ and his teachings and biblical teaching, biblical ethics. And that makes it easier for both children and parents to put things in perspective, right? And so we've seen parents drive their children to quit college, baseball. I can remember a very, very talented young man. Everyone knew from 8 years old this boy was going to be the next uh, big thing. You just knew it,
Yeah.
and he probably would have, but he had a father that just rode him too hard. And in high school, he started getting in a lot of trouble, and didn't even play baseball is his junior and senior year. So you have those tragic stories that you hope your parents, as a pastor, never get to experience that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit the African American context, and I know you're a scholar along with the other hats that you wear.
Yeah.
You study preaching and you study how African American pastors lead. What role has sports played in the African American experience? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh yeah. Yesterday was Jackie Robinson Day, and so in the African American experience, and this is unfortunate, but also something to be proud of, because people like Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant. We also know that the Don Staley. We also know that these women and men are brilliant. They are brilliant. They're not just athletes. Tiger Woods. They're some of the wealthiest people, brilliant entrepreneurs, right? But we also know that because of our country's long history of racism and locking African Americans out, that athletics, sports were at one period the only avenue that we that opened up doors for African Americans, right? Athena Gibson, Arthur Ashe, and we can go on and on about Jim Brown and other athletes that were first. And so for African Americans and the African American community, these were our heroes, because we didn't see people who looked like us in politics, in government, in industry, right? And so for a while, African Americans were the pride of the African American community, because we were locked out of so many other avenues. And even today, we see African American sports providing an avenue out of some very tough and harsh situations. And so, it's my contention that even in the contemporary context, Black and Brown communities are underserved, many times exploited, and there is a young girl or a young man that's extremely gifted and provides a way out of those harsh situations for their families. Now, what I would like to see from African American athletes who get that break is for them to reach back in their community. So there's a lesson to be learned about individualism and greed that affects all of us. And don't get me wrong, we do see so many. LeBron James is doing an incredible job, and countless others that have recognized their success, and at the same time acknowledge that it's the community that helped them, and so they are doing an amazing job. So I think for so many young girls and boys like my boys, their idols were Kobe Bryant, and I don't know, so many gridiron superstars because they represented for us success. They represented power. They represented someone who defied the odds, who overcame. And African American families, communities, and individuals have a temptation and a way of gravitating to those persons. But we're seeing now, and we've known this from centuries, that African Americans are intelligent, capable of all the human achievements as any other race, but it's the opportunities. So now we see that we have amazing African American athletes who are using their platforms to advocate for disadvantaged persons and communities, that's doing amazing charitable work, that's lending a voice to empower people. So in that sense, Africa, for the African American community, it's a source of pride and an avenue to open doors for children who may not be athletically gifted, right? When you consider the schools, LeBron James Promise Academy, and others, it's just not about sports. It's about empowering people. And for us, some of our bravest, most talented, and successful athletes have been responsible for opening those doors.
Thinking about the course of your life and the role of the athlete as a symbol of different visions of America, this is something that has struck me as I study sports history. There have been eras, 1960s. You mentioned Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You could talk about John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Bill Russell, Jim Brown, as you mentioned, where African American athletes play a particular role in contested ideas about what does America mean. We have a period where the symbol of the athlete, the Michael Jordan, is connected more to ideas about success and wealth and branding. And over the last decade or so, we've had sort of a renaissance of the activist athlete. Over the course of your life, what have you seen change with the African American athlete as a symbol for America, and what have you seen maybe that's stayed the same?
So I think in every era you've had athletes who've used their platform and success for the common good, to advocate, to be activists. As you've stated, the 60s probably was that golden era where you saw athletes use that platform. When you think of Ali, refusing to go to participate in the draft and willing to pay the price, right? He was in prison. But I think then there's the Allen Iverson era, when black athletes are more wedded to hip hop and sort of what I call individualism. I think it's both a blessing and a curse, because we see, especially, I use Allen Iverson because so many sports writers use him as a symbol of resistance, of rebellion, of doing it my way, of he's not coming to the press conference with a tie. He's coming with his headband and a hoodie, and sometimes a hoodie is over his head. So there's this sense of saying that we can play by our rules, and we don't have to do it this way. And there's more than one way to be right or do something. So we see that. So I think there's something to be said about that. But then I also think that there's an era where the athlete was more, it was more about success. It was more about wealth. It was more about individual accolades, and it was more about the cars and the homes and the jewelry and all of these things. As Christians, we know they are fleeting, they are passing away. But now we are seeing people, LeBron James for one, And these are not just African American athletes. I watched the Warriors game last night. Steve Kerr has been an amazing advocate for human rights. Okay, and so they're not just African Americans. But one of the things I've seen wax and wane is the athlete as activists.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more of that today. Colin Kaepernick, others in that arena. I wish we had more. I wish we had more. And I think this is a way of saying that we're much bigger than sports. We're not just entertainers. And as human beings and as an Americans, you don't have to just shut up and dribble.
Yeah.
You have a voice. Your voice matters. And you know, at another time we can talk about NIL. And I want to just plug this. And from my standpoint as a pastor, we did I pastored a small church pastored a small church in Tuscaloosa, but we were very active. Had a relationship with the University of Alabama, with the mayor's office, amazing youth programs, and so some of the athletes have attended my church. One of Cedric Burns, Nick Saban's personal assistant, is a member of Plum Grove Baptist Church. So we've had a privileged access to the University of Alabama. Now, this is prior to NIL. But one of the heartbreaking things of living in Tuscaloosa, and I guess any major college towns, these colleges and universities, they make a lot of money off of sports. I mean, they are building every day, building buildings. And then you add the networks and you add the coaches, but especially in football, probably the largest generator of revenue for these colleges. A lot of these athletes are African Americans, right? And I've seen heartbreaking stories of Bryant-Denny Stadium is packed on Saturday evenings, and there's probably twice as many outside the stadium. Not to mention the millions that are watching. But I've seen these young African American boys in Walmart with slides that barely can afford ramen noodles and juice. Okay, so now we know that there were the handshakes of other things, but my point is, I'm glad to see. I'm an advocate for the college athlete being paid. Now, I do think there needs to be some regulations,
Yeah.
especially with the transfer portal. But I want to place this back in the sphere of ethics,
Yeah.
right? I think there was a lot of exploitation, and so I'm grateful to see all of these athletes, regardless of their ethnicity or race, getting a fair share, because you have, and going back to African American communities, these kids that live in rural communities, in urban ghettos, and they go to college, and people come to see them play. And because of that, we are creating millionaires, billionaires, and sometimes the athlete themselves can barely make it. Their parents are barely making it. So from an ethics standpoint, a pastoral standpoint, I'm glad to see that we're doing something about that.
Yeah.
But as with anything else, sometimes that can become a curse as well. Okay, so that can be idolatry as well. So we still have a lot of work to do. But I'm going back to your question about the African American community. As a pastor, we've seen what's changed is the empowerment in amateur sports, particularly collegiate sports, through NILs. And hopefully it'll open up some pathways for these young women and men to empower their families and communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned empowerment. One of the interesting things over the last year in college football has been a greater outspokenness about faith.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I've talked with some athletes and some others in this world to make sense of it who are Christian athletes, and they cite this idea that as college athletes feel more ownership
Yeah.
over their careers,
Yeah.
if faith is an important part of who they are,
Yeah.
they've been willing to speak out about that. And we've seen it happen across all racial identities, but certainly a lot of those athletes have been African American football players on the Ohio State football team, for example,
Yeah.
or Texas, or Boise State, where these athletes are talking about Jesus, praising Jesus
Yes.
through their sport. So it's been interesting to see faith even intersect with
Yes.
empowerment,
Yeah.
not diminishing that there are
Yeah.
some things to figure out with the
Right.
structure of it, but also there's some good elements when young men and women are freed up to be themselves.
That's right. That's right. And that's one of the things I appreciate about Baylor University. I think we do it right. I mentioned the University of Alabama, not taking anything from my native state, but I like it here, and I like the way our basketball coach, Coach Drew. I like the way our football program. I like the way they do it. I like the way the coaches as leaders are men and women of faith, and that permissions these young athletes to express their faith, to live in that, and to know that yes, there is a connection between our faith and what we do on a basketball court. And no, we don't have to dichotomize. You don't. I'm watching this TV show called Severance, right? you you don't get on the elevator and become a different person of the same person, right? So when you step on that football field, you have a way of witnessing, and not just at the microphone, right? It's witnessing when a penalty is called, the way you respond to it when you disagree with the referee or the umpire. So I think our administrators should be commended for that, in whatever school it is. The coaches should be commended for giving coaches and athletes liberty to lift up the name of Jesus, to highlight. And it's just, you asked me about my favorite team, but I also have my favorite athletes. And my favorite athletes are always the ones who give credit and acknowledge Christ.
Yeah.
Always.
Similar. And there's ways that can happen where it's some people might say, oh, this is just superstitious, or they might say, well, this athlete, how can they say that and do the other thing? And to me, I see this as a part of a conversation that athlete isn't a finished product. They're
That's
a
right.
human being, to your
They're a
point.
human being.
They're on a journey, and acknowledging Jesus doesn't mean that you're fully living the Christian life, but it's something.
Yeah.
And then if they can be connected with people like yourself, with churches, with pastors who are helping them see, here's how your faith relates to your sport,
Yeah.
then I think sport can be a powerful way to lead people forward.
Yeah, I do too. There's growth. All of us have the potential for growth, and that includes the athlete, and especially the young athlete.
Yeah.
They're not like myself. They are not, and like Paul, they've not attained. They've not fully attained, but they're pressing forward. But at least they've acknowledged the best way to press forward is life in Christ, and that's half the journey right there.
That's a great way to end with that word. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
And
Paul.
let's talk again. We'd love to hear more of your thoughts on
I
sports,
would love to share this space with you.
church, ministry, all that stuff. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.